And welcome back inside Brunch. It is 11 o'clock in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, across the region. It is nice to have you with us. Sunday, October 25th. We are into guest number 3. I really fell in love with those young men just now. A little shy, a little hesitant. Yeah, but there we go. Very impressed. Very, very impressed with them. And that voice you hear there is the power of the Irish. You don't mess with them. Mary King is my guest. You already said they heard your voice. Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
It is good.
You're good too.
Yes, it is good. It's really good of you to join us this morning. Mary King migrated to Trinidad and Tobago from Ireland in 1963 after marrying a Trini man. At the time, she was a trained pediatric nurse and midwife. Several years later, attended the University of the West Indies, did mathematics and economics, research in finance and energy. She was the executive chairman of a number of, of the Urea company here in Trinidad and Tobago, and she has had extensive experience dealing with planning and economics. She was a senator, as you know, and also the minister of, planning,
economic
social restructuring,
and
gender issues. Yeah. And we have her here this morning to talk about a number of things, including prices. So there we go with the introduction. It is nice to have you. And she was here really early. You just kind of make me feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be when folks show up on time. Let's talk about food prices and the economy. That's one of the areas I want to go into. The president of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago has said a key contributor to food prices was that supermarket owners were not able to access foreign exchange or commercial banks to buy goods from foreign suppliers, noting that this is one of the reasons for the price increase. A severe shortage is what we have had, even though they have gone back to the old system now. Hopefully that will deal with that. But do you buy the fact that that was a primary factor, as he stated, in the prices going up and up and up and there being no control?
Well, I don't think I've seen any shortages in the supermarkets to begin with.
Yeah, well, we were dealing with him in the question of shortages and prices going up.
And food prices, yes. But that's what I'm saying. I haven't really noticed that there has been any shortage of goods in the supermarkets. They seem to be absolutely full.
Are you comfortable, however? Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we have to define what is inflation, this increase in food prices. So in general, inflation is a rise in prices of goods and services over a particular period of time, right? And this is measured over a basket of goods and services that is chosen by the CSO, and they do their analysis based on that basket. Also, we have core inflation, which is basic general inflation. And then we have headline, when you add headline inflation, which includes food, that is where you naturally will get the major increase. And we have been sitting at, since August 2015, just to look at the figure for now, the current figure for now. August 2015, general inflation rate was 4%. Core was 1.6%, but food inflation was 8.1%. So food inflation has been the driver of our inflation rate. We are looking at prices that are proposed going up. A lot of folks say that the impact of a reduction of VAT from 15 by 2.5% is going to be a major contributor to prices going up, a sort of cascade situation. Do you see that? Well, I think the budget has agreed to, starting from January, to decrease the VAT. Yes, that's what I'm saying. With the decrease, many are saying because... to 12.5%. And you're although right. They are going to add those items which are not now on the list for VATable goods. They're going to add some items. But at 12.5%, I mean, that is a general reduction. That is basically what I cannot really see that it will. I erred in that area because I would say the argument is that there are many other items that will be added. To the VAT collection area, and take that and put it together with the increase in premium and diesel gas. That is, they are all going to be contributors to an increase in prices. That's how I should have presented it to you. 15% fuel. We have to work out what is that fuel input in all the production that we do across the country. What is that fuel input? And therefore, we can then judge what percentage markup we should have based on fuel. Now, if you look at what has happened with the actual doubles vendors the day after the budget, when they increased prices from $4 to $5, what percentage is of all their costs is fuel? And therefore, to increase by 25% to go to $5, that is what you call price gouging.
Right, and that price gouging calls for what many have asked for, which are watchdog groups with teeth.
That many groups have asked for?
Yeah, watchdog groups, folks who are watching the increase in prices, but they can do something about it when they see people doing gouging, raising their prices without any justification, that sort of thing.
Well, I think the fact that we liberalized and you have a free market, there's very little you can do to control prices. I think it is a matter of moral suasion, basically. Perhaps you could have a law that if I increase something by 1%, you can't increase anything by more than 1%. There could be a law, but I can't see that happening in a democratic, free, open economy.
So in the free market, you're saying we just have to go by the question of supply and demand? Is that what you're saying?
Well, well, that's what causes inflation in the first place. Too few goods with a lot of money chasing those goods. That is what causes inflation in the first place.
Are you encouraged by the budget passed by the finance minister for next year? Albeit there will be a revision in 6 months, but are you encouraged by it in the sense that it goes a long way towards controlling the cost of living and at the same time introducing some of the austerity measures that many anticipate will happen as a consequence of the reduction in revenue from the oil-based industry?
I can't say at all that I am at all pleased with the budget. I think the budget has been a dismal failure as far as I'm concerned.
Please.
It has failed to make definitive attempts to reduce aggregate spending onshore, particularly with its proposed $63 billion budget. Given that its income is only $41 billion, of which oil and gas revenue has fallen from last year it was $13 billion to this year it's $5.5 billion. So given that, I think the budget has failed to indicate also how it is going to reconstruct the onshore economy so that we can be able to produce globally competitive goods and services. It's insufficient to insist that every child must have education, no child will be left behind, but that is only one input into building an economic structure. That is one input into building a competitive human resource. You have to provide the other institutions which will make us into an innovative and knowledge-based society. There are institutions which we have to build, which include finance, marketing and market development, research and development, and of course, building that four-structure national innovation system which will enable us to be able to produce new goods and services for export, because you cannot live without foreign exchange. We are based on, our economy is an open economy, and it's based on the earnings of foreign exchange. The onshore could not live without the earnings from the energy sector. So I don't think the budget went far enough into telling us how we are going to reconstruct, and I think it went too far in its spending. We did not limit the aggregate spending, and therefore there will be, of course, inflation.
Economist Mary King is our guest this morning on Brunch. We're going to be spending an hour with her. You touched on the area of other areas that we need to energize. What was it? It was 2010, I believe. You looked at the figures coming out of the Global Competitive Index, and it showed that we were, 138 out of 139 as far as innovation is concerned?
That's correct.
And you said back then that we've got to spend time encouraging more energy be spent and the resources put into that. You also questioned whether our universities were working in harmony with the demands of the nation.
That's correct. The universities are not linked at all in any way to industry. When you look at developed countries across the world, you will see that there is a tripartite structure. You will have research and development, you will have a link to industry, and you will have government supporting the research and development and the development of new goods and services. So you have to have that the triple helix, as it's known in the economic world. And if you do not start that process, then we are continuing to go down the road to wherever, oblivion in the end, because our oil and gas is depleting. We have, according to the Ryder Scott's last report, we have now less than 12 years. I think they actually said 11 years. So the oil and gas is depleting, and although there may be more oil to be found in the deep,
to be done, yes.
it will be more expensive because it's in the deeper waters, more expensive to drill, more expensive to bring to market. But you also have to look at that in comparison with what is happening with the new technologies and the fracking industry in the US, where they have now been at the stage where they're about to start exporting oil and gas.
Yes,
so
indeed.
really and truly, we are sleeping and we really need to wake up.
Question of having statistics to support what we're doing. One of the reasons for Moody's downgrade was the inadequate provision of vital macroeconomics data. I mean, how do we value the performance in our major sectors without the insistence and the assistance, without the insistence on the assistance from real numbers. The CSO. Neglect for the CSO is something that's discussed all the time. And in any measurement you try to use, you're going to find that absent numbers, you are just speaking in the wind.
That is true. And when I went into the ministry in 2011, they had already started the process of reconstructing the CSO. And the plan then was that it was to become an independent institution. And we had some researchers from Sweden assisting them and the IDB assisting them. But it looks like in the last 4.5 years that nothing has actually been done. It's actually degraded because we had the CSO staff having to leave the building they were in because of OSHA concerns. And also, a lot of them were working from home. It was totally inefficient. And therefore, we could not possibly have produced correct data over the last few years. We're really in a terrible state and it's total neglect.
Because nothing can survive without you having a foundation from whence you plan.
Data builds production. You cannot start a company without having the data to go with it. What's happening here? What are the prices here? How can I be productive? How can I be profitable? And also compare it with what's happening across the world so that you know that you'll also be globally competitive.
In your capacity,
you need the data.
Indeed, in your capacity as an economist, we all know as any level, from any level, without some foundation, there's no way you can build on it. Diversification is something we bandy about very easily. Everybody talks about diversification. What would you recommend considering the current hydrocarbon production environment that we have here? What kind of diversification? Where do we go?
Well, this is the plan that we had started in 2011, where we had put into our manifesto and also into, well, I shouldn't say our manifesto. I was not really part of the building of it, but I had an input into it. The manifesto, which included the building of a national innovation system, which is what was started in the ministry. So the idea was that, yes, we would introduce the triple helix and we would have built the institutions that I talked about earlier for our graduates. We would have built the institutions which would include the research and development and building centers of excellence attached to, but not necessarily part of the university, but attached to because of their skills, the discussions that can go on in universities among the staff of the institutions, the library facilities, all the internet facilities that they would have. So we were about to build centers of excellence, linking it to industry. We would have had a department of market development and market research. We would have had a finance unit which would have funded this research and development and would have held the shares in the new companies that would have emanated from those centers of excellence, because it was basically to do research into new areas of where we could be most competitive. That is very important. You can't just say, we're going into shipbuilding, we're going into this, we're going into that, we're going into the other. It has to be built on some kind of scientific research. So besides the marketing and the finance and the centers of excellence and the research, we also had a unit that would have held the intellectual property which would have emanated from those research centers. So that is what was about to be built within the ministry. We got as far as going around the country with the proposal. We did a series of what we called panchayats at the time, and we went to all areas of Trinidad and Tobago, and we got great buy-in. We got other ideas from the public and from the businessmen and from the diplomats. We invited everybody, farmers included, school children. So then we started this phase 2 of that exercise, which was a foresighting exercise.
You hear my guest speak of when we were in government. She's speaking of the PP government. The ministry that she headed was planning, economic and social restructuring, and gender. During that period, these initiatives were there, including what you said. TNT has never been able to get into a system of building knowledge, building new products, building new services, and signaling the intent of the ministry to go in that direction is what you did at the time. In your opinion, even though you left, even though you know part of that, was any of that achieved?
Well, the foresighting exercise was started in January 2011. And that included the diaspora, where we went out for discussion papers on all sectors and all the issues that would have come up in a restructuring plan. We looked at from education to agriculture, every sector of that could possibly be included in a sectoral plan. We included the diaspora because we have great brains outside of Trinidad and Tobago and the region that are also involved in research and development, so we included them as part of the exercise to give us their ideas. And at that stage, we'd built a website and we were going to have interactive discussion on these research papers. That is where it was left. That was dropped.
One of the reasons,
nothing was done.
I do not want to go back particularly into that whole area of governance. Instead, to take what was proposed at that time and ask you where we are. That was dropped. What can we do now?
I think we have to start it. And I have heard the new Minister of Planning in her budget contribution state that they are going to build a national innovation policy. But I think we're really past the policy stage. It has already been developed. It is a matter of implementation. And I'm going to seek a meeting with the staff of the ministry so that we can go back to where we left in 2011 and present what was done up to there. And see if we could convince them that this model is what developed countries have used and are very successful. Many, many countries have used the model.
It is 17 minutes after 11 o'clock. You're planning on this meeting. You also had an organization that deals with transparency.
I was the chairman many years ago of the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute. I was a founding member.
Precisely.
For many years. At this moment, as a past parliamentarian, I am now the treasurer of the global organization of Parliamentarians Against Corruption. We just had elections 2 weeks ago in Indonesia, and I've been elected treasurer.
Madam Treasurer,
and on the executive committee of the global organization. So I'm very, very involved in transparency and accountability.
How comfortable are you with the strides we have made in Trinidad and Tobago and where we are I'll ask you to elaborate on that, in the area of transparency and accountability?
Well, I don't think we have given the institutions that are responsible for trying to bring about more accountability, I don't think we have given them the resources that they require. I think in many of these institutions, if you look at the Integrity Commission, the Solicitor General, the Auditor General's Department, a lot of these institutions are not properly staffed, and therefore they cannot really do the job that is required. When you look at the number of ministries we have and the number of statutory authorities, the number of state enterprises, it is not possible that with the current staff in these institutions that they can actually do the job effectively.
You were saying the charter is good, they're just short of staff. Is comprehensive sufficient? It gives them the power.
When we signed the UN Convention Against Corruption, which is many, many years ago, we also signed on to bringing about an institution which would look at corruption in all its aspects, transparency and accountability in all its aspects, which would have included not only the public officials or public sector, but would have included also private sector. And in that unit, in that institution, we would also have had to change the laws to include illicit enrichment, because when you have illicit enrichment included in your law, the person that you are investigating has got to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt how they got the money that they have, that they're able to do certain things, which is over and above what their salary would allow them to do. We have not done that. So there are certain things which I think should be changed. I think the Integrity Commission really and truly has passed its life. I think we need to build the new institution, which we should have done under the UN Convention Against Corruption. That is one of the things that Transparency and the GOPAC traces in all the countries in the world. How have they implemented the UN Convention Against Corruption? So we're very au courant with what each country in the world has done as far as implementing it. Some are way ahead and some are way behind. And I think that is one of the things that I think we should push for, to have the new institute, the anti-corruption agency, which will include all of these factors and change the law where necessary.
The executive of the International Board of Global Organization of Parliamentarians Against Corruption, Mary King, is our guest here this morning. We are talking about accountability. That's one aspect of the many things we'll be talking about this morning. You mentioned the Integrity Commission. If you had to, you mentioned staffing is one of the instances there, as with other checks and balance organizations we have. But let's deal with the Integrity Commission itself. Would you say that you said it has outlived its life? Explain
its usefulness. I think
its
it's
usefulness.
outlived
What would
its
we
usefulness.
do? What would we do to replace?
I think the Integrity Commission has become compromised in many ways. I think people do not trust the results or the reports that come from the Integrity Commission, and I think it has outlived its usefulness and it should be closed down. And we should go for the one that we have agreed to and signed on to as a country with the UN, which is the UN Convention Against Corruption Agency, an anti-corruption agency, which includes private and public sector. Anybody in the society can be investigated for corruption under this one, whereas the Integrity Commission in Trinidad and Tobago is only looking at persons in public life.
What about the appointment of the board?
Well,
what about how people are appointed?
Because is done by the president in consultation.
And you're comfortable with that remaining that?
I am comfortable with that, yes.
All right. Mary King, as I mentioned before, I do want to ask you another area. I'm going back into the portfolio you held before, social restructuring. Yes, because I believe a lot can be learned from it, because a number of things that we saw manifest itself came from that basic umbrella. So I wanted to ask you to explain to me, what was the social restructuring aspect of your ministry?
Well, I think it had to do with the serious issues in the society. Poverty, street dwellers, dropouts. All of the issues were under investigation and under discussion that would have led to a proposal for the revamping of certain institutions and certain ways in which we now do things. We had a whole committee set up to deal with the street dwellers, but I think that also kind of has not really come to any results.
It was germane,
and we have not seen that there has been any reduction.
It was germane then, as it would be now. What are the
proposals? Vital.
Yes, what are the proposals that you can articulate for our listeners this morning and for the country as a whole on the issue of dealing with the street dwellers?
Well, I think we have to go back to building family lives. We have to go back to building our communities, and those were the issues that we were actually looking at. Why do we have so many women, mothers of young children, who are employed in URP and CPEP, who are out on the streets holding up a piece of cloth to keep stones from hitting cars, when their children are being looked after by somebody who may not be the best person to look after them? In my view, the best person to look after a child is its mother. And if its mother is not around, its nearest female relative. The ages between 0 and 4 years old is when a child's whole character is nurtured, and it can make or break the way that child will continue to grow. So I think we have to go back to building families, and we have to go back to encouraging mothers to stay at home. In all developed societies, mothers have long periods of pregnancy leave. And some cases, fathers also have a certain period of paternity leave, so that there is some bonding elements within that family unit at that particular time, which is a vital time in any new family, to have a new addition to the family. I think we really have not done sufficient research into the causes for why are these women out working? Why are they not looking after their children? If it's a matter of finance, which obviously it will be one of the biggest issues, it will be a matter of finance, and therefore we have to adopt what other countries have done. Call it dole, call it what you want, but we want to pay those mothers to stay home and nurture their babies, and in the meantime have some element of training within the communities so that when that child is now ready to go to preschool, which is now almost every child can go to a preschool in Trinidad and Tobago, that mother has got some training and will be able to go into a sustainable job and not back into a URP. So there's a whole series of things which have to be done within communities. We have lots of models which has happened in other countries, and we have to start adopting some to suit us, to suit Trinidad and Tobago.
There is no panacea, and you cannot start from one point and just jump off. But many argue, as I concur with, that we've got to take this back to the schoolyard. We've got to take this back, because it is one thing for the parent to end up on a URP job, but before they got there, you had a whole situation of what they were prepared for,
yes,
their value, how they were evaluated, and where they were steered as a way for them to go. So we go back to the education from the elementary level.
That's correct. And what we found when we were doing our panchayats and when we were planning for the reconstruction of both the economic and social, was that there wasn't enough data to begin with. But what we found was that even when we recommended that mothers maybe should be staying at home, some of those mothers themselves were saying they don't want to stay home, they want to be out. Now, that is also a matter of education, and therefore I agree with you. But we also found in our discussions and our research that our current education system is not going to cut it for a new thrust into the new development, a new embryonic economy. We have to build a new embryonic set of new entrepreneurs. And therefore, our current education system cannot do it. We have to go back, as you said, to primary school and revamp the whole curriculum from beginning to end. And discussions on all of this should be taking place, but they're not. And it's very, very frustrating that we're not taking part in the discussions. We're talking a lot, but we're not actually doing the work that needs to be done so that we can build those new communities and new family life
Hence
structures.
my disappointment that most of what I read that you were articulating back in 2010, 2011 seemed to have dropped on the wayside after you left, because it's unfair now, I think you will concur, to expect in a short life of 2 months or so on for there to be full ideas coming forward as to what we do with a problem that has lasted even before the last 5 years.
Oh, long time.
But
this problem started way back in the 70s, 80s.
Exactly.
The first oil boom. This problem started way back then.
Mm-hmm. It is not about blame. It's about picking up where we are.
Yes,
Give me
that's
some suggestion as to how we can start the family aspect of it in building the esteem and getting the institutions to understand. Because you mentioned two very important areas there, which is family time for parents to spend with their children.
Of course.
Maybe I should just go straight into that, because you're now asking employers to look at this differently. Do you legislate these things? Is that what you're looking at that must be done here, to make time for the mother to spend time, which is maternity leave, etc., and be paid, and for the father to have paternity time? I mean, what are you suggesting? How we go about this? How do you think we can go about getting this done?
Paid maternity leave?
Yes, across the board.
But I think besides the maternity leave, when it is time for when her leave is finished, I think we have to encourage that mother to stay home with that child until it's at least 3 years old. That is what I'm talking about. The government has to step in with some form of funding. Don't care what you call it, but we have to fund those mothers to stay at home, and during that time also have some training within her community so that she can be ready to do something substantial when her child does get into preschool. But yes, employers have also got to be part of the discussion, because we may want that mother to have more than 3 months maternity leave. In some countries, it's a year. That's a long time. But we have to decide what is best for Trinidad and Tobago, but we're not having a discussion. As a matter of fact, during my time as a minister, we presented to Cabinet a note on introducing paternity leave, but it was noted, but it was not implemented. Because that bonding period when that baby is born is very, very important. I mean, even though we have absentee fathers, we still have fathers, and we still have families where fathers live in the family, and therefore we want to encourage that bonding and that family unity that is very important.
Question always comes up, which goes first, the chicken or the egg? In this case, sometimes you'll see me just going forward and dropping back. I'm going to drop by just a little
yes,
bit.
You're jumping around.
5,000 children fall through the cracks is what the Ministry of Education has said per year. How do we? What kind
is
of?
Is this primary school, secondary school? What?
Primary school, yes.
Fall through the cracks in that they don't leave primary school?
Yeah, it's that they drop out from the education system. They drop out. Yes, they just drop out. And we don't keep track of them to do anything, and we reap the benefits, the sad benefits of that later on.
We don't keep track of them. That is true, and this actually came up during discussions some years ago, and it was decided that these children were dropping out of school because they had to go out in the streets and vend for their parents, or they had to babysit, or they had to do something else which the parents weren't capable of doing, or the mother wasn't capable of doing. Now, this is a whole area that has to be researched on its own, but I don't think that anybody is following that up. Yes, we may have the data, but what are we doing about it? Have they told us how they're going to solve the problem? No. So we need to go further than that and see what we're going to do about it. We don't have enough social workers to begin with in communities, so therefore we don't collect that kind of data. It'll be hard to find them. You'd have to go out and have people in the communities doing research and finding them. And really and truly, over all these years, we've been asking for more social workers, more nurses, more assistant nurses, but we still don't have the quantum necessary in order to do the things that we feel are necessary in a developed society.
Domestic violence was another area that was under your ministry, the area of gender.
Area of gender, yes. Domestic violence would have come under that.
Yes. And dealing in that area is, again, back to that question of the education and the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, the culture of people understanding this is the man role, the woman's role, and the whole question of who is in charge of what conflict resolution is a part of that. It is a overall picture that has to be approached. Help us to navigate this. How do we go about doing this, as you see?
Well, I don't think there's any getting away from going into the communities and holding your training and doing your research in the first place, holding training sessions within the communities. I mean, we talked about PAN in school and school in PAN for years and years, whereas we could have been building communities within the PAN yards. If we had homework centres and we had parents meeting, we could have all of these things going. But really and truly, we have not done any of this. And I feel it all comes back to building your communities, building your families, and having those discussions and training, and as you say, conflict resolution. All of that has got to do with training, and in the culture of some people, yes, they have to be changed, but it's very difficult to change a culture. You can only do it over a long period of time. But you have to start the process of discussion.
And that is what we keep trying to do here. When I say I am merging a lot of thoughts together, because a lot of thoughts as nothing stands on its own. The question of equality in salary may not seem to have anything to do with your education, but it does. If in fact a young woman is working the same job as a man, not making the money, she cannot make ends meet as well as he is equipped to. There becomes a dependence syndrome where sometimes some of this abuse we're talking about is tolerated because of survival.
That's correct.
And
some mothers have no income at all, so they're in a much worse position.
Exactly.
It is survival.
Exactly. Equality in salary ranges, as you yourself agreed, it is a major issue, but it's a very difficult one in most countries. How do we approach this?
I think only recently in the United States they have said there will be equity, there will be total equity in salary ranges. So let's see how that goes. I don't think Trinidad and Tobago there is a big differential. I could be wrong, but I do not think there is a big differential in salary ranges for professionals in a particular position. As I said, I could be wrong. So
I looked at that because I remember.
We also have the case, though, where the female in the relationship is the more qualified one, and earning more money than her counterpart, her partner, and therefore that also creates frustration with that male, and that also creates violence. It can create violence.
Detail that, please, because oftentimes that is overlooked, and it is a real situation.
It is a real situation. That is true. But how do you deal with that? It goes back to education.
Yes.
Community education, training, trying to change the way people think. Those young people who were in there this morning, speaking before I came,
Yes.
they obviously have been able to begin to change the culture in which they were born into. And I thought it was tremendous. I could have listened for the next hour to them. Yes. But it is a matter of training, and they've started early, going to the police youth training camp or club, is it? And they've started early, and that is great. And we should have more of these young people trying to do the same in all the police districts.
In case you're just joining us, the voice you're hearing is that of our guest, who is Mary King, who is a former senator and minister in the last government, covering a number of areas, some of which we are touching on this morning. I'm encouraged to hear you say that you don't see much of a disparity in income in Trinidad and Tobago, because I recall back then you made the point that we have to change the structure of many companies, boards, medical health facilities, and so on, to eliminate this discrimination, this wage discrimination.
Yeah, but there's also a discrimination at board levels in the private sector about females. That is a given. As a matter of fact, I asked a captain of industry once, I was doing an interview with him, probably 15 years ago, and I said to him, I notice you don't have many females on your boards. Why is that? He just looked at me and said, you must be joking. As if that was out of the question. But that particular company has now got a few females on their boards. There is discrimination in the private sector, I think. It's only my opinion. There's certainly more males than females on their boards.
Areas where you think you can advise for the whole question of use of community, the community itself seemed to, and I'm still in the area of social restructuring, because I was really interested in that, because I believe that is a very germane component of getting this whole thing moving. Communities, folks have to feel good in their communities. Folks have to find ways of finding a reason to want to see their community develop. There seems to be not that sense of pride going on. Give me your view on that, please.
Whether communities want to see growth in their communities?
No, all communities want to see growth in their communities. What we're finding is that, there's simple things like a community center, simple things of people seeing that there's an enterprise zone in their area, that folks feeling that, something is happening in their community and feeling good about it. That seemed to be absent.
Because that has not really been focused on. And I would say in the last 5 years, there was little focus on real development, because to tell me you're building a building is development, that is not so. Development is developing the people and developing the human resource, developing the knowledge within the society, developing that aspect of we can do what we want to do and we can build our own economy. We have not been working towards making people feel that we can do those things. It was more important to build the building, get the contract going, and get it finished and up. And we've got buildings now up but not finished. So,
You're right back, yes. You have not really done anything.
Fruitless, yes.
I did ask you a question earlier. I'm going to take a break for a moment, and we'll come back. You're listening to Brunch. I am Rennie Bishop. My guest is Mrs. Mary King. We'll be back in a moment.